was one of the worst E. coli outbreaks in our nation's history,
This could happen to anybody.
tied to our beloved desert Southwest.
We need to do a better job getting our story out.
Our ag community scrambling to bounce back. Tonight, how the E. coli outbreak was linked to our area, how it's affecting us now, and what local farmers are doing to make sure it doesn't happen again. Understanding the Outbreak, a 13 on Your Side special edition, starts now.
Good evening, I'm Caitlin Slater. Welcome to 13 on Your Side's romaine lettuce recall special. E. coli, it's the one word dreaded by farmers. Its effects were felt in 2018, and today we're still feeling the economic impact in our ag community. This is how it all began.
Americans are being warned to stay away from all romaine lettuce everywhere.
A remarkable warning from the CDC just 2 days before Americans sit down for Thanksgiving dinner.
Blake, the CDC has yet to identify the cause of this outbreak, but should you be worried?
Move forward and make sure we can try to keep this from happening again. We're going to be better for this on the other side.
The E. coli outbreak was first reported in March of 2018. The Centers for Disease Control said 210 people got sick from the outbreak. Of that number, 27 were hospitalized and 5 people died. According to the CDC, through a series of investigations and an in-depth traceback system, it was linked to irrigation water used on a field in Yuma, Arizona. 8 months later, another E. coli outbreak occurred, also from romaine lettuce contamination, this time out of cooling facilities in Santa Barbara, California. It sickened 59 people from 15 different states and Canada, but no deaths were reported. Due to major safety concerns while investigations were underway with this latest outbreak, Yuma and Imperial County romaine lettuce fields were forced to halt production and throw out all lettuce until the source was confirmed. Weeks later, footage emerged of trucks dumping hundreds of cases of lettuce out in the desert, the sight quite devastating to our community. How much of a hit have local farmers really taken from these E. coli outbreaks? We spoke to JV Farms General Manager Matt McGuire, who breaks it down.
For me, it's kind of heartbreaking. You know, I'm in this industry. I like to watch this stuff grow. I see the people we employ. And like this year, because of last year's outbreak and the losses they took up at Salinas, acres were cut about 20% in this area.
Just how much money comes from a romaine lettuce field?
Well, like this field here, 30-acre field represents $120,000.
In 1 acre alone, about 800 cases of lettuce are harvested. For this 30-acre field, that's nearly 24,000 cases. After the recalls, farmers were forced to disc their crop. That means a special machine has to come and dig up the produce, turn it over, and let it decay in the field.
Ourselves, we've probably disked 3 times that much right now.
So we are losing millions of dollars.
Yes, that's the figure.
And consumer confidence is still broken today, so the demand for romaine lettuce is at an all-time low.
And plus, you have to remember what we are, because there's so much romaine on the market, because nobody's buying it, basically anything we do harvest is not returning money back to the rancher.
Unfortunately, donating the lettuce to local food banks aren't an option either.
It costs almost as much to harvest as it does to grow it. So if we go, you know, we're just throwing good money after bad. So, you know, your first loss is always your best loss.
With all this money lost, will our farmers be okay?
We've been through the ups and downs of good and bad markets through the years, you know, and yeah, hopefully you hold a big enough bank account to come play again next year.
The battle now is gaining consumer trust.
Shoot, we just broke their confidence again. How can we get them to understand that the percentage of people who are sick and is just, we send out so many servings every day of lettuce. I mean, I think there's about 175,000 cases sent out daily. And you have to remember 160, 140 something people got sick in the last outbreak in November. That represents 2 cases of romaine.
McGuire says you have a better chance of being struck by lightning twice than eating infected lettuce.
Out of this year right now, so far we've had no trouble, no outbreaks, so I tell the consumers, hey, right now we're good to go. Eat your romaine, eat your iceberg, eat your broccoli. I said all the studies show the more vegetables you eat, the healthier you are. We're coming to a point that people aren't eating. We're going to start having the ramifications of people not eating fresh vegetables, and that is they that there's more illnesses that come along because people don't eat healthy.
Next on Understanding the Outbreak.
We're looking for something that you can't see, you can't smell, you can't taste, you can't hear. So I can't walk out in the field and say, oh, I've got that problem.
We speak to a local third-generation farmer about the impacts of these outbreaks and why hundreds of thousands of pounds of romaine has to be tossed out.
Welcome back. I'm here with Corey Mellon, who is the president of the Yuma Fresh Vegetable Association. Thank you, Corey, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Start out by telling us a little bit about your farm and what you grow.
I'm with Mellon Farms, and we grow winter vegetable produce, lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, romaine, spinach, and in the summertime we grow cotton, wheat, Sudan grass.
And how long has farming been in your family?
I'm third generation. My grandfather started it back in 1943, actually just a little, about a mile and a half from where we're at today.
In light of the recent romaine lettuce recalls, can you share with us how it makes you feel when you hear of these situations?
The first thought's always of the people, and then the next thought is how do we fix it? How do we improve what we're doing?
Why is it frustrating for the industry when these E. coli outbreaks happen?
The major frustration for me as a grower is we're chasing something, we're looking for something that you can't see, you can't smell, you can't taste, you can't hear. So I can't walk out in the field and say, oh, I've got that problem.
And in turn, a lot of product goes to waste. And we're even here in front of one of your beautiful romaine lettuce fields. And we were talking earlier, is there a chance that this might not even be harvested?
There is a good chance. Market conditions right now are not favorable. With the cost of inputs and growing this crop and now the cost of harvesting it, it makes more economic sense to just the senders. So
we can't donate this or give it away to anyone?
The problem with donation is, yes, we'd love to run it up to the Yuma Community Food Bank or elsewhere, but the labor involved in cutting it would make it not conducive to do so.
We know that farmers are definitely affected by these E. coli outbreaks, but who else is affected?
You know, anybody that's in any section of the industry, whether it's the labor to harvest the crop, to help grow the crop, help irrigate the crop, the truckers that take it across our nation, the distribution system centers, they're all affected.
How do you track down bad food to the field that it came to? A lot of people still don't understand really how that process works.
There is a traceability aspect to what we do. It does need improvement, but on the farm level, if you look behind me, there's some flags out in the field. And on those flags is written pertinent information to when it was planted, what crop it is, what variety it is, and all the inputs that we put to that crop are tied back to that labeling system. It's carried to the cooler with that harvest information, and it's shipped across the U.S. with that information attached to it.
Lastly, is there anything that you feel our public needs to know?
You know, as farmers, we're really good at growing crops. That's what we do day in and day out. As advocates for ourselves and our industry, we're not so good, so we need to do a better job getting our story out. One of the stories that I want the consumer to know is I'm also a consumer. My wife and I buy our produce from the grocery store. We feed it to our family, my two daughters. We eat at the same restaurants that everybody else eats at, so we're at the same risk. And when you talk about the risk of an E. coli outbreak, there was an article written in the Wall Street Journal not too long ago that talked about the statistics of becoming sick from E. coli or being hospitalized by E. coli. And it referenced there was a 1 in 11 million chance that you would become sick from E. coli. There's a 1 in 28 million chance that you would be hospitalized by E. coli. If you look at those statistics, they're pretty good statistics when in fact there's a 1 in 1 million chance that you'd be struck by lightning any given year. So I want the general consumer to know that our product is safe and that we are also consumers of that product.
Thank you so much, Corey, for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Next on Understanding the Outbreak, how one Imperial Valley farmer was impacted by the E. coli outbreak. Plus, what's next for the future of growing romaine lettuce? That's next on Understanding the Outbreak.
Welcome back. An Imperial Valley farmer says he too was impacted by the recalls. Billy Kang reports.
Romaine lettuce brought in $50 million in gross revenue in 2017, according to the Imperial County Crops and Livestock Report. But growers were hit with the recall in the spring of 2018, and tragedy struck again later that fall.
I think a lot of the companies in this business were finally getting a sigh of relief after a tough summer, and then this happens when we kind of saw we're getting down the end of the yellow brick road, and it just crashed and broke right in front of us.
Consumer demand has gone down for romaine lettuce.
Yeah, currently, I mean, we kind of have what we call market decline. There's still a certain percentage of the U.S. population that may not consume romaine because of the scares of what they've heard from the CDC and FDA over the last 6 to 12 months.
Millions of dollars that could have helped our local economy were lost due to the recall.
And we dumped thousands of cartons back in the field. We were harvesting that day when the announcement was made. The crews, we stopped the crew, and those people didn't work for 2 weeks.
Even with the recall lifted, growers are still having a hard time making ends meet.
Right now we're struggling just to get what we call half our growing costs back. Say it costs you $10 a box to cover all your costs, and they're selling at $8 today, so every box going out, we're losing $2 a box on our growing cost.
But growers are working together to ensure consumers that the food they put on your table is safe.
What's next to our ranches, what's in the water, we're constantly water testing, we're constantly surveying the ground from a pre-plant assessment. We look at the ground before we even plant the crop. We look at everything before we harvest the crop.
Thanks for that report, Billy. And in 2019, farmers push on to bring you the safest and freshest produce in the world. Fourth-generation farmer and manager of Tim Dunn Farms, Kirk Dunn, expresses his thoughts on the future of farming.
Telling people to not eat any romaine lettuce is a mistake.
Months after an E. coli outbreak shook up the ag industry, farmers are now dealing with new challenges.
The biggest challenge, I think, for vegetable farmers here in Yuma is going to be more from a PR standpoint and getting the message out to consumers that we grow the safest and most affordable produce anywhere in the world. And the fact of the matter is that the vegetable industry here in Yuma already had self-imposed standards that went far beyond anything the federal government was asking them to do, which the FDA admitted to when they started conducting their investigations.
How will the future of growing romaine lettuce change?
I don't think it's going to change much. The fact of the matter is that there's only a certain number of places in the world where you can have this type of vegetable production, and Americans, by and large, myself included, need to eat more vegetables, not less. So there's no way that production is going to go anywhere.
Dunn believes that there would be no Yuma if it weren't for the agriculture industry.
That's one of the biggest pitches for Yuma in the next couple of decades with regards to all the things politically that's going on here in Arizona, especially when it comes to water rights and the municipalities trying to take water from Yuma and move them to those cities. It's going to be, rather than moving water to those cities, the businesses need to come to Yuma and invest, because we have such a rich community and just there's nothing else like it in the world.
13 on Your Side asked Dunn how the media could learn to handle these situations better.
That's a great question. I think making sure that you have all the facts in order before you start especially naming specific businesses is the biggest thing. That's what's been most disappointing, and we all want to see, if there is an issue, we all want to make sure that the public is aware of it. But at the same time, there's some things that the media have done that have really harmed farmers and have not helped consumers. And that's what we need to try to avoid.
Looking ahead, Dunn is set to improve the ag industry in Yuma and hopes to make a major positive impact.
The biggest impact I want to make is finding new opportunities for other farmers, being able to find different crops that can fit in the vegetable rotation, because the vegetable industry is what drives the ag industry here in Yuma. And so being able to find good opportunities for farmers when they need to plant something to keep the soil fertility right, but without losing so many dollars an acre, that's what I hope to bring to the table for farming here in Yuma.
Next on Understanding the Outbreak.
They were two completely separate areas of the country, two completely separate strains of E. coli, so they weren't related in that sense.
How research has shifted since the recalls, and what's being done to prevent another E. coli outbreak here in our own backyard. Stay with us.
Welcome back. I'm here with Paul Brierly, a friend of the show, who is the Executive Director at the Yuma Center of Excellence for Desert Agriculture. Paul, thanks for joining us today.
You bet. Thanks for having me out.
Start out by telling us, for those that don't know, what the Yuma Center of Excellence for Desert Agriculture does.
So we were formed as a joint public-private partnership between the University of Arizona and the ag industry. Advisory council of donors, stakeholders in the agriculture industry that support our center, and they advise me on what topics really need attention and that they need solutions to them. And then we basically go out and try to engage researchers who will work on those problems and find funding and resources and work closely with them to get answers.
How has the research that you guys are doing at the center, how has that really changed? And moving into 2019, what are you really focusing on?
With these outbreaks and this really kind of crisis that was facing the industry, we gathered together with our donors and with researchers from the college and the Center for Produce Safety and some of the other entities, and basically said, you know, how can we help move things forward? And there's really 4 areas that need advancing. You need avoidance or prevention. You need detection, so you know when there's a problem before it enters the food supply or before you harvest it, preferably. You need trace back, so you can do good trace back immediately when there is a problem. And then really the holy grail is to find a kill step that you know, that would work on these. As you may have thought about with fresh produce, there's no pasteurization that you can do. You can't heat treat it, and so a kill step is not something that we have right now.
Gosh, how is it that we had 2 recalls within the same year? How, in the exact same produce, romaine lettuce?
I think it was luck of the draw, or bad luck of the draw, if you want to call it. They were 2 completely separate areas of the country, 2 completely separate strains of E. coli, so they weren't related in that sense. I think also people are much more in tune to that now, and when there is somebody that gets ill, they report it to their doctor. There's a much better reporting mechanism, so it's being watched more closely.
Tell us about some of the precautions that people are taking in the ag industry.
In general, or since the outbreak?
Since the outbreak.
Because in general, they do all sorts of things. Training of workers, you know, documenting the training, everything that happens with the crop. They look for any incursion of, like I say, animals or any bird droppings or any footprints. And if there is something found like that, they don't harvest an area around that. There was a recent article in the paper that I might reiterate to people is, if you go out here and say, oh, let's grab you know, a head of this romaine, that's going to lead to the harvesters seeing that there's a footprint, and they're going to cordon off a 50-foot area and not harvest that lettuce. So, but then there's new technology that can be applied, and that's one of the places that we're really working on. Is we're working with technology companies and even military contractors who do high technology for other applications. And maybe they're looking for anthrax for terrorism attacks or something like that. And can we fine-tune that to where we can detect real time as the harvester goes through or at the processing plant if there's a problem, and keep that out of the food supply.
Is there anything you feel that the public needs to know about food safety and all that's being done to make sure that our food is safe to eat?
I think just exactly that, all that's being done. I think people perceive that we don't do anything, we just go out and pick the lettuce and sell it. But I think they would be amazed at, again, how much water testing goes on, how much product testing, how much training of employees, how much cleanliness, you know, with chlorine and hand washing, and the $1 million machines that are out here because they're made of stainless steel so that you don't have pathogens on them. And so there's just a lot of work goes into it, and as of these outbreaks, there's a lot more going into it, and a lot of research being focused on even more tools for them to be able to avoid it.
Well, thank you so much, Paul, for joining us today. We've definitely learned a lot.
You bet. Thank you.
That concludes our series on the romaine recalls. We hope you now have a better understanding of the work our farmers do to bring fresh produce to your table. Once again, I'm Caitlin Slater, and thank you for watching.